Night lowered over the palace square and made the lamps look brighter than they really were. The rehearsal had ended. Crews rolled cables and stacked railings. Evan stood at the edge of the stone and drew a line in his notebook. He marked the path from the east gate to the viewing platform. He counted paces. He looked up at the lamps and watched how each one threw a hard circle on the ground. He closed his eyes and listened. Far away, a late drum sounded 2 slow thuds, like a tired heart. Then silence. The Queen's word opened doors for him. The winter storeroom gave up a pile of old diffusers, thin white shells meant to soften winter light. A pair of engineers helped him carry them. A ladder crew brought 2 tall frames and a safe lift. 3 guards came in plain armor with soft soles. Evan asked their names and repeated them until he could say them without thinking. Kira, Thal, Marrow. He liked to use names. Names slowed anger and sharpened care. Tonight we make a soft path, he said. It will not look grand. It will look plain. Plain is good. Kira nodded. Thal tested his steps on the stone and then on a strip of mat. Marrow listened for echo at each turn. The engineers clipped diffusers over every second lamp on the line Evan had drawn. Where clips did not fit, Evan used self-bonding tape, pressed flat and neat. He kept checking from the princess's eye height. He crouched, he looked up, he stood, he looked down, so the light would be even and not blade bright. At the far corner of the square, the drum leader waited with his sticks across his lap. He had a face lined by years of winter ceremonies, and a pride as tall as the banners. He did not like change. Evan sat on the drum ledge rather than stand. He set the small metronome beside the sticks and let it click. "I'm not asking you to stop," Evan said. "I am asking you to breathe. When she reaches this mark," he tapped a chalk X on the stone, "give me 4 beats of quiet, then play. That is all." "The people expect thunder," the leader said. "The old story says the drums call the season strength." "Strength can wait for 4 heartbeats," Evan said. "A child cannot." The drum leader weighed that. He picked up his sticks and tapped the metronome's pace with one hand, then held both hands still for 4 clicks, then tapped again. He grunted once. "You will stand where I can see your hand. You will show me when." Evan nodded. He taught the leader a small signal. Palm down, slow sweep, 1, 2, 3, 4, then a closed fist to hold, then open hand to play. Simple, visible, no flourish. The steward arrived at the edge of the square and watched with his arms folded so tight, his sleeves creased in sharp lines. "This is shameful," he said. "The crown hides under cloth and tricks." Evan did not answer him. He looked at the stone. He looked at the lamps. He looked at the route again from the height of a child in a chair. He asked Kira to walk the line at his speed while he watched shadows. He asked Thal to test how guard footsteps sounded near the diffused lamps versus the bare ones. He asked Marrow to stand in the loudest corner and count how long it took for sound to quiet after a drum roll stopped. They did it. The steward kept his words behind his teeth, but his eyes said he would remember all of this and take it to anyone who would listen. Evan went back inside the palace for an hour. In the laundry, he found a strip of cloth that had a tight weave and a good weight. He stitched tiny lead beads into its hem so it would hang steady in the air. He tied the strip into a neat loop. Not a knot, because a loop could be held and let go without a fight. He placed it in a cloth pouch. He wrote a small note and tucked it under the loop. "Hold this if you want. You can let go any time." He also made a second picture card. He drew 5 small icons with clear lines: a path, a hand, an eye, a wave, a door. Under each he wrote plain words: walk, stop, look, wave, leave. He kept the card close. Before he slept for 2 hours on a bench in the maintenance room, he walked the empty corridor near the family wing and listened to it breathe. He set his metronome on the floor and matched his steps to its click. He tried to imagine the square from the princess's ears and eyes. He made 2 more notes. Tell guards to keep shoulders low, ask torch team to lower flame just for 20 paces. He left a message for the torch captain and slid it under the door. Dawn came in pieces, pale gray at the windows, the smell of wet stone, the murmur of early crowds at the edge of the square. Palace staff moved with quiet urgency. Some were interested, some were doubtful, some were irritated. The steward wore irritation like a badge. He did not speak to Evan. He spoke to everyone else as if his voice were a chisel. Evan met the queen in the family corridor. She wore a robe the color of river rock and a plain silver band. No heavy jewels, no fast movements. She looked at Evan's hands and then at his face. "Is the ground ready?" she asked. "It is softer than it was," he said. "It is not perfect, but it is better." The princess sat in her chair, awake and alert. The bead chain looped around 2 fingers. The nurses had wrapped the thin crossbar again so it would not ring. The chair wheels were clean. The picture card lay on her lap. Evan knelt so his eyes were level with hers, the same as he always did. "Good morning," he said quietly. "I have a small loop you can hold if you want. It is heavy in a nice way. It will not swing too much." He placed the pouch on the tray and stepped back. The nurse opened it and showed the loop. The princess reached and touched it with 2 fingers. She tested its weight. She lifted it, felt the pull of the little beads, and then she slid her hand through and held it with her palm. Her shoulders lowered a little. She kept the bead chain in her other hand. Evan held up the second picture card and tapped each square. "Walk," he said. "Stop. Look. Wave. Leave." He pointed to the last word again and made the door sign with his hand. "We will leave when you want." The princess looked at the card and then at his face. She touched the word leave with 1 finger and then placed that finger on the edge of the tray where the loop rested. Evan nodded. Choice was a door that stayed open. The steward arrived with 2 ministers in pale robes. He spoke in a smooth voice that wanted to be a whisper but could not. "Majesty, the square is ready. The crowd is large. The drums will strike the old rhythm. The torches are lit. If your adjustments disrupt the order, the ministers will note it." "The ministers may note what they wish," the queen said without heat. She looked at her daughter. "We will honor the season and the child." The walk began. Kira took the lead, 2 paces ahead and 1 to the right. Thal walked on the left, half a step behind the chair. Marrow brought up the side opposite the queen. The nurses walked like water, steady, quiet, giving space. Evan walked beside the chair but not too close, the picture card in 1 hand, the other hand free for signals. The queen walked behind them, not like a shadow, but like a presence that made a small calm around them. At the east gate, noise grew from a far hum to a low, steady wash. People had filled the square. The air held the smell of oil and dust and morning bread. The torches along the front rows burned smaller than last year. The captain had read Evan's note. The lamps above their route wore white diffusers that washed the stone in soft light. Even so, the square was large, and the feeling of many eyes was its own kind of noise. The princess's breath quickened. Her fingers tightened on the loop. Evan matched his breath to hers for 3 cycles, and then eased his breath slower. He did not tell her what to do. He did the thing, and let her body choose whether to mirror. Her breath slowed a little. He tapped walk on the card, and then pointed to the clear line of stone in front of them. They moved. Kira took even steps. Thal and Marrow shortened their strides to match the chair's wheel turn. The nurses walked with their hands low, not hovering over the princess's shoulders. The queen's steps made almost no sound. She had changed her shoes for this. The crowd's faces were a field of color and light. Some wanted to cheer and wave their hands high. Guards in the front line kept the crowd behind the rail. A Q flag rose and fell at the far end of the square. Evan lifted his hand to the drum leader and showed the slow sweep. 1, 2, 3, 4. The leader nodded. His hands hovered above the skins and held still. For the first 10 paces, the drums did not strike. The square felt like someone holding a breath with care. The princess's shoulders eased. She glanced to the side at the white diffusers and then straight ahead. The loop hung steady. The bead chain moved in small circles. The picture card tapped the tray in a gentle beat. They reached the first mark Evan had drawn. He raised his hand again and gave the slow sweep. The drum leader waited, then lifted his sticks and brought them down. The sound rolled across the stone like hills under a slow wind. It was deep, not sharp. It went to the body more than to the ears. The princess flinched at the first roll, then settled. Evan tapped stop on the card, and the group paused under the soft lamp. He tapped look and pointed to the far banner that moved a little in the breeze. The princess looked where he pointed. The queen lifted her hand a fraction, not yet the wave, just a sign to the crowd that said, "Be patient." They took 5 more paces. They stopped. They took 5 more. The crowd learned the rhythm without being told. Move, pause, breathe, move again. It was not theater. It was kindness, measured and carried. They were halfway to the viewing platform when the trouble began. A junior drum team at the south corner had not understood the leader's new plan. They had. The inner hall was brighter than the antechamber, but still gentle on the eyes. Evan stood at the visitor's mark and listened. Queen Leora did not rush her questions. She asked how he knew when to move closer and when to stay still. She asked how he noticed the tiny rattle under the chair and why he used a warm towel instead of a cold one. Evan answered in the same way he worked, slow, clear, and plain. He said he watched hands before he watched faces. He said a rattle is like a pebble, in a chute small but it changes everything. He said warm air spoke softer than words sometimes. "I want to help my daughter in the day as well as in a moment of crisis," the queen said. "You will observe her routine. You will not give orders. You will write what you see. You will tell me simple changes I can ask my staff to try. Do you agree?" "I agree," Evan said. The steward shifted his weight. "Majesty, if a human must observe, he should observe from a screen." The queen's eyes did not move from Evan. "We are finished, steward. Arrange his access. Today." So the day began again, but this time with doors opening that had never opened for a janitor. A simple tag on Evan's badge unlocked the East Towers family corridor in the morning. The walls here had soft greens and pale gold lines. The floor felt softer underfoot, not because it was, but because the sound changed at each step. The builders had lined the stone from beneath so it did not echo. 2 nurses greeted him with small bows, then looked unsure what to do next. I'm here to watch," he said. "You lead. I will keep out of the way. If I have a thought, I will ask permission to speak it." The princess's morning routine began with a soft chime. She sat up with the help of a small lifting frame above the bed. Her hands went first to the thin chain of beads on the headboard. She ran the beads through her fingers. Her breath came fast, then evened out. Evan made a small note. Simple touch. Early. Helpful. The room lights brightened by a fraction each minute. At the second minute, the right-hand lamp buzzed. It was a tiny sound like a sleepy insect. The princess's eyes flicked that way and blinked twice. Evan marked it. Buzz. 2 blinks. Minute 2. A guard outside shifted his boots and the leather, made a small squeak. The princess looked at the door and squeezed the beads. Evan marked that too. When the nurses lifted her to the mobility chair, one of the metal hooks clicked against the frame. Not loud, but sharp. The princess's hands tensed. The nurse winced. "Sorry, princess." She looked at Evan with a small, worried frown. "We try to be quiet." "You are careful," Evan said. "It still clicks." He did not say more. He wrote the word click in the margin and put a dot beside it. They moved down the corridor toward a room the nurses called the learning room. In the corridor, a vent blew a thin stream of cool air across the princess's path. Evan watched the fine hairs on her forearm lift. He stepped to the side and held his own hand in the stream. The air was not cold, but it was fast. He made a note. Fast air is like rough stone. The learning room had a table with rounded corners and a tray with picture cards. The pictures were simple and bright. The princess looked at them, then looked away. The window blinds were open and white light lay across the table like a blade. The nurse pulled the cord and the blinds rattled. The princess blinked hard. Evan wrote, "Rattle plus. Light. Harder." He asked softly, "May I try a thing?" The nurse nodded. Evan walked to the window and, instead of closing the blinds, he tilted them so the light broke into small, soft strips that lay across the far wall instead of the table. He pressed the cord with his finger so it would not rattle against the wood. Then he stepped back and said nothing. The princess looked at the table again. Her shoulders dropped a little. He did not speak to her directly yet. He watched. He learned the rhythm of the day. He saw how the breakfast tray rattled on the rolling cart, how the cup tapped the saucer like a tiny hammer. He saw how the chair's small front wheel vibrated when it crossed a seam in the floor tile near the tea alcove. He saw how a nurse's perfume, light and sweet to most people, made the princess's nose wrinkle. He made notes with small words. No judgments, only facts and little arrows. At midday, the queen returned. She wore a simpler robe now, no circlet, just a thin silver band at her braid. She stood at the door, not inside yet, and watched as the princess rolled a smooth bead between her fingers. "What do you think?" she asked Evan. "I think your daughter likes to be told what comes next," he said. "Not in a long string, one step at a time. I think wheels should not rattle at floor seams. I think room light should not fall like a blade. What will you do with those thoughts?" she asked. "Ask to try small things," he said. "If they help, keep them. If they do not, stop." The queen nodded once. "Try." That afternoon, Evan went back to his own world, storage rooms and maintenance closets, and gathered a few simple things. He took cloth wraps that were meant for protecting pipes and cut them into narrow strips. He took a small box of self-bonding tape. He took a set of soft rubber feet meant for ladders. He took a folded screen used to hide buckets. During state dinners and a length of faded green fabric found at the back of a shelf. He added a small metronome from the music room, borrowed with a signed note, and a blank card the size of his hand. He returned to the family corridor and asked the nurses for 10 minutes in the learning room while the princess was in the therapy pool. He wrapped the chair's thin crossbar in cloth so it would not carry sound like a bell. He pressed the rubber feet under the tray so it would not tap. He set the screen in a corner and hung the green fabric in a loose drape to make a quiet nook. He turned the metronome on and set it to a slow, steady click. He checked that the sound could be heard at the nook, not at the table. He drew 4 small pictures on the blank card with his pencil. A sun for morning, a bowl for eating, a window for looking, a book for learning. He left the 5th square empty. When the princess returned, he did not announce anything. He stood near the door, hands folded, and watched. She rolled into the room. Her eyes moved to the table, then to the corner where the screen stood. She tilted her head. It was a small tilt, but curious. The queen, now seated on a simple bench along the wall, watched too. "May I show a thing?" Evan asked the nurses. "You may," the queen said. He walked to the quiet nook and sat on the floor to show it was safe. He tapped the fabric so it made a very small wave, then held still. The princess looked at his hands, then at the fabric, then at the open space between. Evan stood and stepped away. He did not say, "Come." He let the space invite. The princess moved her chair slowly toward the nook. The new rubber feet on the tray kept the small cups from tapping. The cloth on the crossbar stopped the tiny ring it used to make. She reached out and touched the fabric, then pulled her hand back, then touched it again and left her fingers there for 2 breaths. Her shoulders lowered. The queen's hands relaxed in her lap. Evan did not smile big or speak. He turned the metronome 1 notch down and the click became a little slower. He folded the picture card in half and held it out, then placed it gently on the edge of the table. "Today," he said in a soft voice. He pointed to the sun drawing. "Morning." He touched the bowl. "Eat." He touched the window. "Look." He touched the book. "Learn." He tapped the empty square. "Choose." He stepped back. The princess's eyes went to the card. She lifted a hand and touched the empty square. Then she pointed to the nook. Evan nodded and said, "Quiet." He wrote the word Quiet under the blank square in slow, clear letters. He put the card where she could see it but not where it would demand her eyes. The steward arrived in the doorway and cleared his throat. He took in the screen, the fabric, the card, the strips of cloth on the chair, and the rubber feet under the tray. His mouth pressed thin. "Majesty, this is not our protocol. We cannot have maintenance screens used as furniture." The queen did not look at him. She watched her daughter's fingers make a small, slow rub on the fabric, back and forth, like the bead chain at the bed. The princess's breathing had become steady. "What harm is done?" the queen asked. "It is improper," the steward said. "Improper can wait," the queen said. "Harm cannot." The steward bowed a fraction and went away with a face like a sealed door. For the next hour, Evan said almost nothing. He stood near the door and watched the room change around the princess rather than the princess change for the room. The nurses placed the cup on the tray and it did not tap. One of them stepped a little softer across the seam where the tile changed. The other nurse asked in a soft voice, "Window?" The princess looked at the picture card and touched the window square. Together they turned the blind so the light fell on the far wall. The nurses looked at each other with a very small, bright shock. They had never seen the princess choose with such ease. Later, when the princess grew tired and a tiny whimper began at the back of her throat, Evan did not speak. He turned his body so the metronome clicked just at the edge of her hearing and raised his hand to his chest, then out, then in a slow rhythm. It was not a sign he had learned from anyone here. It was a simple breath sign. The princess watched. The hand for 2 beats and matched the motion with her eyes. The whimper faded. That evening, Evan returned to the storage room and made labels. He wrote "Quiet Corner" on a small card and hung it on the back of the screen where only staff could see. Reminder, not. Dawn spread like pale paint across the city. The square filled with people, but they did not shout. Many had learned the quiet wave, open hand, slow side to side, and they used it while they waited. Torches burned small. Lamps wore white diffusers over the soft path. Drummers stood ready with sticks lifted but calm, eyes on their leader's hand. Queen Leora stepped onto the balcony in her river rock robe. She looked down at the crowd and then back to the family corridor. Evan stood at the door in his navy jumpsuit with a clean badge and a folded picture card in his pocket. She lifted a hand toward him. "Stand with me," she said. Evan walked out. The stone under his boots felt cool. The air smelled like clean water and bread. He stood 1 step behind the queen's right shoulder, not in front. He did not wave. He rested his hands at his sides and breathed steady, the way he had taught others to do in tight moments. "People of our city," Queen Leora said, her voice warm and clear. "Yesterday we learned a better way to share space. Many of you kept a quiet window open so my child could pass. Today we will make that care a rule, not a favor." A herald brought a plain wooden table and set it near the balcony rail. On it lay a short scroll with a green ribbon. There was no heavy gold pen, only a simple dark stylus and a seal of soft metal. "This decree is short," the queen said. "Short words can be strong. We will add 4 things to our life together. First, quiet windows, short planned moments of reduced sound and light in all public events, so anyone may attend with dignity. Second, soft paths, marked routes with soft light and low echo, for those who need them. Third, training. Guards, nurses, engineers, and all staff will learn to ask, to move slow, to hold when harm is near. Fourth, voice. Changes will be designed with the people who need them, not for them without asking." She turned and faced him. "Evan Price, you showed us this with your hands and your breath. Will you serve as consultant for accessibility to the crown?" Evan did not step closer to the front. He stayed where he was. "Yes, Majesty," he said. "I will serve. I will not work alone. We will listen. We will try small things. We will keep what helps." The queen signed the decree with the stylus. The seal pressed down with a soft click. The herald lifted the scroll so the crowd could see the green ribbon and the fresh mark. "We begin now," the queen said. Below, the drum leader raised his palm in the hold signal, open hand, slow sweep. 4 soft beats of air moved through the square. People waited, still. Then he opened his hands to the skins and gave 1 deep, even roll. It was not proud, it was steady. It said, We hear you. The crowd answered with the quiet wave, a tide of open hands from one side of the city to the other. Work began before breakfast. Evan met the heads of the key groups in the antechamber, nurses in soft green, guards in matte armor, 2 engineers with pencils behind their ears, the drum leader with his sticks wrapped in cloth, and the torch, captain with burn-scarred hands and kind eyes. Kira, Thal, and Marrow stood near the door ready to help. The advisor had a tablet, the steward had a folder and the same sealed door face, but he did not speak yet. We need a team with all kinds of eyes, Evan said. We will walk rooms the way a river walks its banks, slow, looking for places that cut. We will fix the cuts. We will ask people what they need. We will write it down. We will test. We will stop what does not help. What is the team called? The advisor asked. Soft ground, Evan said without thinking too long. Because we make the ground safe. The Queen nodded. Soft ground is formed, she said. Go. They started with small wins. In the learning room, Evan showed the engineers how to press soft feet under trays and wrap a thin crossbar so it would not ring. In the long corridor to the garden, guards learned to change steps for 20 paces, where sound collected under the arch. In the tea alcove, a thin mat hid the seam that made the chair shake. In the window frames, felt tabs stopped cords from rattling. The drum leader trained his juniors in the hold signal until their hands knew it, the way hands know a favorite cup. The torch captain tried a simple cover over torch heads along soft paths to cut glare without killing the flame. He smiled when it worked. Good, he said. Old tricks for new needs. They made a symbol for soft paths, a simple curved line around a small dot. An artist from the kitchen, who painted fruit on menu boards, drew it on cards with steady hands. The symbol went up in halls, on door frames, on lampposts, on railings. People learned it in one look. By noon, they met their first hard problem. The grand hall echoed like a cave. Even soft steps became loud. The ceiling was high and proud. The stone loved to send sound back to itself. We cannot hang heavy drapes. The hall must show its stone, the steward said, voice tight. We can hide soft behind hard, Evan said. He asked the engineers for thin panels. They tucked them behind banners and inside column recesses where eyes could not see but ears could feel. They spread a stripe of matte wax in front of the throne, where light fell like a blade. The hall still rang, but not like before. The echo time cut in half. The steward touched a column and said nothing. His eyes changed one shade softer. In the afternoon, they took the plan outside the palace. A market vendor who wore hearing aids showed them a spot where 3 alleys met, and sound jumped like a pinball. The soft ground team marked a soft path that bent around the loud corner and painted the symbol where it turned. They asked the stall owner to move a bright, flashing sign 1 arm's length higher. He did. I thought people liked the flash, he said. Some do, Evan said. Some feel it as a poke. This way helps both. At a busy school courtyard, a teacher showed them how assemblies made 2 students sit alone at the edge with hands over ears. We do not know what to do, she said. The drum leader set his juniors at the far wall with practice pads. He taught the whole school the hold signal. He showed teachers how to mark a soft path from the back door to a quiet corner near the stage with the symbol. He asked the children to help make handcards with walk, stop, look, wave, leave in bright, simple drawings. One of the 2 students tried the soft path and sat in the quiet corner with a friend. When the drums paused for 4 breaths, the whole school felt the difference. They clapped at the end, but only after the hold, not before. At sunset, the soft ground team returned to the palace to write what they had learned. Evan kept the notes simple. Felt tab stops cord rattle, rubber feet stop tray tap, diffuser every second lamp on soft path, hold signal, palm, sweep, 4. People learn fast if sign is simple. He pinned the notes on a board. Anyone could read them. The steward came in with his folder. His mouth was still a line, but his eyes were not a sealed door now. I have rewritten 3 protocols, he said. He held out the papers like someone passing a tool. They include quiet windows and the soft path symbol. They require staff to ask before they act. I did not expect to write this. Evan took the papers and skimmed the words. They were neat, short, and clear. Good, he said. We will test them. The steward looked at him for a second as if waiting for a sting that did not come. I feared this change, he said, quiet. I thought it would make us look weak. It makes us look like we care, Evan said, and the steward nodded once, slow. The next week, the city looked a little different each day. At the ferry dock, a rope with soft knots marked where to stand so bodies would not press too close. The ferry horn lowered its tone for the first and last calls. A sign with the soft path symbol showed a route around the loudest speakers. People took it without fuss. In the library, a shelf moved from a high spot to a low one so small hands could reach books without help. A felt square sat in a basket, at each table. When rooms got busy, people could rub the square and calm their own hands without being told to just sit still. At the big clinic, the check-in area gained a small, breathing corner, with a chair, a draped screen, and a plain card with the 5 steps. Say their name. Say what you will do. Move slow. Let them choose if they can. Breathe. A nurse said it like a poem. People began to say it back to her with a smile. The guard captain added 2 quiet windows to the changing of the watch. At first the guards laughed, at the idea. Then they felt the shift in their own bodies when they held for 4 breaths before the heavy steps. The new steps came down strong but not hard. I like this, one said, surprised. The symbol spread. It appeared in the tram, station at the bottom of the stairs. It appeared at the door of a theater with a note, quiet window at scene change 2 times. It appeared at the city gate with an arrow showing a side route for carts that rattled more than others. People began to make small changes without orders. A baker put a strip of cloth under a tray so the cup did not tap. A teacher put a paper tag on a bell so it clicked instead of rang. A child drew the soft path symbol on a slate and propped it up in front of her younger brother when the room got loud. He smiled and crawled under the table with him to sit a minute. Their mother laughed and left them be. Not everyone liked it at first. A man in the market said the city was getting too soft. He wanted drums bright and lights proud. The drum leader handed him 2 sticks and invited him to a training. The man learned to hold for 4. He felt how the first strike after the hold carried more power, not less. He brought his daughter to the next practice and she showed him where the soft. The morning shift began before the palace lights reached full day. Evan liked that time. The halls were quiet. The floors were cool. Machines hummed in a low and steady way, like soft rain behind a closed window. He walked with his cart, checked the mop head, checked the towel stack, checked the little heater unit on his belt. He liked to be ready. If the floor was safe, people felt safe. That was his thinking. Clean first, then comfort. The palace medical wing curved like a white river through the east tower. It smelled faintly of metal and mint soap. Nurses passed in pairs. A guard at each corner stood tall but looked bored. Evan's badge said Maintenance J Sanitation. Most staff just called him janitor. That was fine. He kept a small pencil tucked behind one ear and a folded checklist in his pocket. The list had boxes no bigger than rice grains. He ticked the boxes with a quick hand. Sweep, mop, dry, check slip risk, replace mats, test heater, smile. He turned a corner and stopped. A clear gel, nutrient gel by the look, had spilled across the corridor outside the therapy room. It spread slow like honey and shone a little under the ceiling lamps. A toppled container lay on its side near the door. A nurse crouched beside it with gloved hands trying to scoop the gel back into the container. The guard waved his hands at people to step around. The floor was slick. 2 more nurses were inside the therapy room. He heard a soft sound from inside like a small whimper, then another sound that was sharper like a startled cry cut short. Evan set his cart's brakes and touched the floor with the edge of his shoe. Very slippery. He looked up. On the wall, a security lens watched the corridor. He did not think about that. He looked for the spill kit, did not see one nearby, then reached into his cart for absorbent pads. Hold, human, the guard said, but not harshly. We will call sanitation. I am sanitation, Evan said in a calm voice. He pointed to his badge and then to the spread of gel. If the floor is safe, everyone is safe. Another cry came from the therapy room. Evan moved fast but careful. He set warning signs. He laid down 2 large pads, then 2 more to make a path. He crouched and began to press down so the pads would drink the gel. His motions were slow and even. He kept his head low so his shadow would not change the light too much. Some people did not like sudden shadows. A nurse peeked out from the therapy room. Her eyes were wide. She cannot move. The gel got on the wheels. The smell is strong for her. It is too much. I can make it less, Evan said. May I enter? The guard started to speak. Then a soft tone chime came from his collar. He touched his ear and then gave a short nod. You may enter, he said, still watching carefully. Evan pushed his cart to the door and angled it so the wheels stayed on the dry pads. Inside, the air was warmer. The lights were bright. A child sat in a compact mobility chair with teal cushions. Her fingers curled tight against the armrest. She had soft gray skin with a faint speckle pattern on her cheeks. Her eyes were bright and moving fast, not focusing on any one thing. The gel had smeared on one wheel and along the floor mat under the chair. A faint scent, sweet and sharp at the same time, hung in the air. A machine in the corner blinked with a quick rhythm. Princess, a nurse whispered. Help is here. Evan did not bow, not yet. He did not want his head motion to startle the child. He went down to one knee so his eyes were level with hers. His voice was quiet and steady. Hello, my name is Evan. I clean floors. I also make small fixes. May I help you clean the gel from your wheel? I will move slow. If you want me to stop, lift your hand like this. He raised his own hand a little, then set it back down. The child's eyes flicked to his hand. They flicked to the wheel. She did not lift her hand. That, to Evan, was yes. He reached into his cart and took a soft towel. He touched the tiny heater unit on his belt. It hummed, and in a few breaths the towel was warm but not hot. Warm helped. Cold, shocked. Hot, surprised. Warm said you are safe. He showed the towel to the child before he moved it near her. This is warm, he said. I'm going to clean the wheel. He moved slow. The towel touched the rim. He wiped in small circles. He did not scrape. He did not rush. When the towel picked up gel, he turned it to a clean part. He worked from the side of the wheel that was far from her foot first, so she could see the motion from a safe distance. The nurse watched his hands and relaxed a little. The beeping machine slowed by a few ticks. The child's breathing was shallow and quick. Evan matched it for a few seconds and then made his breath a little slower, like a tide pulling back from the sand. Sometimes people mirrored breath without thinking about it. He did not say, breathe with me. He just breathed and kept cleaning. Lights, he said softly without looking away. Can someone set the room lights to soft white level 2? One nurse moved to the panel and dimmed the light a little. The room lost its hard glare. The colors became gentle. The child's eyes blinked 2 times, slower. Evan took out a second towel. He warmed it. He laid it across the mat under the chair where the gel had smeared. He did not lift the chair. He did not jostle it. He slid the towel with a flat hand, so there was no bump. He reached behind, found the second wheel, and checked it. Clean. He took another towel and warmed it again. This one he held still near the child's hand. He did not touch her skin. He let the warm air rise like a little cloud. Smell can be too strong, he said. Warm towel can make a new scent. Plain, soft, like rain on cloth. He paused, for several breaths. He took the trash bag and carefully folded the used towels into it. He sprayed a neutralizer on the floor in a fine mist, waited, then wiped with long, slow strokes. Why is the human in here? A voice said from the door. The chief steward had arrived. He wore a silver sash and a face like a polished spoon. This is not procedure. Evan kept his voice even. The floor was unsafe. The wheel was stuck. I am fixing both. The steward looked at the nurses. Call engineering. Call Royal Care. Engineering will take 12 minutes, one nurse said. Care team is in the west wing. The princess was in distress. The steward folded his arms. And so you called a janitor. Nobody called me, Evan said. I was next door. I heard. He did not add more. He turned the wheel slowly to check the rim. Clean. He set a gentle non-slip mat from his cart on top of the floor mat. He cut the edges with a small blade so it fit snug around the chair's base. He used his pencil to mark a tiny arrow on the corner that should face the door. He always did that. It made later checks faster. The child's fingers uncurled a little. She looked at his hands. She looked at the warm towel in air near her own hand. She lifted her fingers, then set them down, then lifted them again. Evan let the towel rest on his open palm and moved it in a small, slow wave. Her eyes followed the motion. It was a simple rhythm, in and out. He matched it with his breath again. Princess, may I move the chair 5 centimeters forward? He asked, showing the space with 2 fingers. Just 5, I will not twist, I will go slow. She did not lift her hand, so he moved the chair that small distance. No jerks, no surprises. After that, he took a roll of gray tape from his cart. It was not sticky like normal tape. It had a rough texture and bonded only to itself. He wrapped it around a thin part of the chair frame to stop a tiny rattle that his ear had noticed the moment he stepped in. Rattles bothered people even when they did not know why they felt tense. The guard by the door stood straighter. The steward looked more annoyed. Evan kept working. He put the used towels in the bag and sealed it. He took out a fresh cloth, warmed it, and held it near the princess's cheek, then slowly moved it away. I am going to take away the strong smell now, he said. He opened a small packet of neutral gel he carried for chemical spills, spread a thin bead across the remaining slick on the floor, and waited 10 seconds. He wiped it clean. The floor shone without glare. A soft sound came from the child then. It was not a cry. It was a small hum that rose and fell 2 times. To the nurses it was new. One nurse covered her mouth with her hand, surprised and happy. Evan did not smile big. He smiled with his eyes only. A big smile could be too much right now. He placed a final mat outside the therapy room door. He stood up slowly and stepped back once. He breathed once more, slow and even. Is it better? He asked, not to the room but to the child. You can say nothing. That is okay. I just want to know if it is better. The child looked at the doorway where the spill had been. She looked at the wheel. She reached a hand toward Evan's sleeve and brushed the cloth with 2 fingers, very light, then let go. It was not a grab. It was like a thank you without words. Evan nodded and bowed his head a little, not too low, not too fast. Behind the 2-way mirror on the upper wall, Queen Leora watched. She had been watching since the call came to her private channel a few minutes before. At first, she had planned to send orders and go back to her duties. Now she stood very still. She saw how the human moved. She saw how he told the room what he was doing before he did it. She saw how he matched his breath to her daughter's breath. She saw that he did not reach before asking. In the Queen's chest, something tight loosened a bit. Do you see the difference? The Queen asked the advisor at her side. She did not take her eyes from the scene. The janitor is slow, the advisor said, uncertain. He moves like fog. It wastes time. It saves panic, the Queen said, more to herself than to him. The square balanced on a thin edge. The steward's hand gripped Evan's shoulder. The junior drums cut bright lines through the air. The princess's breath went high and tight. For a heartbeat, even the light felt sharp. Queen Leora stepped forward. She did not shout. She did not wave her arms. She moved between the steward and Evan the way a door moves on good hinges, sure and quiet. Her gaze touched the guard's hand. The guard let go at once as if the Queen's eyes were a command all by themselves. Let him work, the Queen said. Her voice was warm stone, soft, but it held weight. It carried through the near rows and into the space around the child. Evan did not look up. He kept his eyes level with the princess's eyes and made his breath slow and even. In through the nose for 4, out through the mouth for 4. He raised his open palm, down and up, a small tide. With his other hand, he tapped the stop square on the card and rested the card where she could see it without turning her head. The junior drum team struck again, fast and bright. The sound was like thin glass. Queen Leora lifted one hand, palm out toward the drum leader at the far end. He understood at once and threw his own hand up, palm wide. His line held still. He spun toward the south corner and slashed a cut sign, through the air. The juniors hesitated, confused. They were far. The crowd was loud. They could not read the sign. The queen tilted her head to the herald at her side. "Quiet window," she said. Only 2 words. The herald lifted a small horn, not the big silver one that shouted orders, but a plain brass one used for practice calls. He sounded 4 soft notes that most of the crowd missed, but every drummer knew from training. Hold for 4, listen, reset. The senior drummers froze their sticks over skin. The bright corner stuttered, then faltered, then stopped as the leaders' deep roll reached them and filled the gaps like earth poured into a crack. The square fell into a hush that was not silence but something close. Torches hissed. Cloth banners breathed. A few children whispered and their parents touched their shoulders. A bird crossed high above and the sound of its wings was loud enough to hear. Evan's palm rose and fell. 4 in, he breathed. 4 out. The words were soft as the cloth he had hung in the learning room. He did not ask the princess to copy him. He simply breathed near her, steady and open. He lifted the card 1 notch and tapped "Look." He turned his head a little so the diffused lamp, not the raw one, was in her view. He made his body a wall against the worst glare. The princess's hands trembled, then found the loop with its tiny beads sewn into the hem. She slid her fingers inside it and felt weight. She closed and opened her fist once. The loop did not swing much. It gave back a small tug that said, "I am here." Her other hand found the bead chain and moved it in a slow circle, not the fast rattle from a moment ago. The hard line in her shoulders softened by a finger's width. The steward tried to speak again, but the queen's palm lifted a finger's height, and his voice went no farther than his own teeth. He swallowed his words. His face was a sealed door again. Evan kept his rhythm. He did not crowd the child. He did not put his hand on her shoulder. He let the quiet do half the work. He let the weight of the loop do a little more. He counted with the rise of his chest, not with numbers, but with time itself. 1 breath. Another. A third. The princess blinked. The blink was slow. Air came in and left again. Not smooth yet, but not sharp. She glanced at the card. Her eyes went to the stop square and then to his palm. He lowered his palm. He tapped "Look" again and pointed toward the flag above the viewing platform. Soft green moving like a small river. Her gaze followed. She did not flinch. Around them, 1,000 people tried to make themselves small. They did not know how to help, so they used the only tool they had. They held still. Hands lowered. Flags were quiet. Boots did not stamp. It was not perfect, but it was enough to keep the quiet window open. Queen Leora stepped, so she stood just behind and to the side of her daughter. She did not take the place of a guard. She took the place of a mother who refuses to let noise be stronger than love. "Together," she said softly, and her breath matched the tiny rise and fall she could see in her child's shoulders. "The ya?" Drum leader, seeing the breath return, looked to Evan. Evan lifted his hand, palm down, and made the slow sweep. 1, 2, 3, 4. He held his fist closed for 1 count more and then opened it toward the leader. The leader gave back a sound like thunder under a blanket, deep, slow, even. No bright edges. The princess did not startle. Her fingers kept moving the loop. Light. Steady. The bead chain went in a round motion like a small planet. Evan tapped "Walk" on the card. He lifted his eyebrows in a question that was not a push. The princess looked ahead along the soft-lit stone. Her breath steadied one more notch. She nodded a fraction. They moved. For the next 20 paces, the square learned a new rhythm. Drums, roll, wait, steps, even, pause. Light. Soft, soft, soft. Crowd. Hands open. No shout. Faces bright but quiet. Where the stone seam had a hard shadow, Evan guided the chair half a hand's width to the left, and Thal moved with the chair like a tree that leans when a friend leans. Where? A torch guttered as a breeze came. Marrow shifted his shoulder into the wind so the flame bent away. Kira watched the corner of the route where a child in the front row reached too far. She smiled and put a finger on her lips in the universal sign of quiet. The child's parent nodded with gratitude and held the small hand closer. At the third pause near the diffused lamp Evan liked best, the princess looked up, not down. Her eyes found faces, many faces, bright with hope and respect. Some were human, some were not, but all of them were open in that moment. Evan tapped the next square on the card. Wave. He did not wave for her. He only tapped the picture and then waited. The princess lifted her hand slowly, loop still resting over her fingers, and made a small side-to-side motion. It was not big. It was not quick. It was hers. The crowd did something no one had told them to do. Thousands of hands lifted, open and slow, the same small side-to-side motion. A quiet wave rolled through the square like wind through tall grass. No cheers, no names, just open hands and kind faces. The queen took a breath like a person finding shore after a long swim. She did not wipe her eyes. She did not need to. Her mouth eased from the line it had been holding since the first bright drum. They reached the viewing platform. A simple chair had been set for the princess, with a soft mat under the wheels and a cloth drape at the side to cut glare. She rolled into place. The metronome was not here, but Evan's breath was enough. He stood beside the chair, not in front, card at his side. The queen stood just behind. The steward and the ministers stayed back, surprised into silence. The harvest oath began. The words were old. They did not need drums or bright lamps to be true. The high farmer spoke, and the words were plain. Tend the soil, share the yield, remember the hungry, give thanks for water and sun. As he spoke, the princess looked not at the crowd now, but at the small bowl of early grain on the pedestal. She reached for one grain with careful fingers, picked it up and placed it on the edge of the bowl. A tiny offering, nothing more. It was not part of the script, but it felt right. The high farmer swallowed and his voice softened. When the oath ended, the queen did not raise her arms to say a grand speech. She did not need grandeur. She stepped forward one pace and spoke so the square could hear. Her voice was the same steady voice she had used with the steward, only larger. Thanks, you for your quiet, she said. Today you kept a window open for my child. You kept it open with your hands and your patience. You showed strength. Strength is not always loud. Often it is simply making space. The crowd did not cheer. They did the quiet wave again, a slow sweep of open hands, and the motion moved like a calm tide from one side of the square to the other. Evan tapped leave on the card and looked at the princess. She touched the same square and then looked up at the queen. The queen nodded and made a small sign to the guard captain. The route back had been measured too. They moved along it with the same rhythm, and when a corner drum team tried to jump, in with a bright flourish, the leader's hand cut the air and they lowered their sticks without a strike. Everyone was learning. Back inside the palace, the noise of the square became a distant hum again. In the family corridor, the princess touched the bead chain on her bed and then looked at the loop in her hand. She placed it on the tray with care. The nurse covered her with a light blanket. Her breath remained steady. She closed her eyes, not in fear but in rest. In the antechamber, officials gathered like birds after a storm, shaking their feathers and making small sounds to each other. The steward came in with a document already half-written. His voice had found its sharpness again. Majesty, the ceremony was irregular. The drums paused in an unapproved pattern. Lighting was modified without a ministry form. A common worker stood in the royal route. We must address these breaches before they set a precedent. The queen listened. She did not interrupt him. When he finished, she looked at the advisors, then at Evan, then back at the steward. A precedent, she said, is only dangerous if it is foolish. This one is wise. We made room for a citizen to belong. That is the shape of a good law. Majesty, the steward tried again. If we allow one change, people will ask for more.